My name is Lawrence, and I am an addict. And I want to thank the committee for allowing me to be the messenger tonight, because that's what I am. I am a messenger. It's been a real overwhelming 3 days for me. I've been going in and out of a lot of fear, nervousness, and I'm glad, because they told me that I was concerned about carrying the message and not carrying me. I came to this program in 1974. As the chairman said, I'm from South Central Los Angeles. I'm from the South Side. I was raised on beans and greens. And so in 1974, I was at the end of my using. I knew that. I was real tired. And I remember I was outside the neighborhood and I was hustling. And I called into the neighborhood, and the connection's mother answered the phone, and she told me in Spanish, "No vengas, don't come." And I knew something was coming down. At that time in Los Angeles, they used to have secret indictments that used to come out every 90 days, and they'd roll up the streets. They'd pick everyone up. And so I remember going to the connection, and I scored 6 spoons. And I came home, and I fixed a half a spoon. And I went to the mirror to tidy myself up. And it was in a little bathroom in my mother's house. There was a 60-watt bulb on. And I looked in the mirror, and my forehead was sticking out like this, and my eyes were sunk. And I could no longer lie to me. I knew what I had become. I was a liar. I was a cheat. I was a thief. I was a convict. And I was a mooch. And I remember as I looked in the mirror, I wanted to say to myself, "Amárrate." In Spanish, that means tighten up, homeboy. You're a regular. Hold your mud. Your name's Beaver, and you're from the South Side. And your name's good in any penitentiary in the state of California. But I couldn't do that. Because I knew what I had become. And so I wrapped up them 5.5 spoons, and I remember sticking them in a condom, and I keistered them, and I thought to myself, there goes my virginity. And I packed a little suitcase. And I remember that little suitcase because the clasp, wouldn't lock. And so I remember I was going to have to hold it like this. And I had a few dollars in my pocket. And I went downtown Los Angeles, and I bought a ticket on a Greyhound bus. And I was going north. I was going to San Francisco. As I said, I knew that I was at the end of my using. My wife had left me for another man. I had 4 children, and they were with moms. And so I got on this Greyhound bus, and I was going to go to San Francisco and stop using and get a job. The only time I had been north from Los Angeles was when I used to catch a Department of Corrections bus on my way to the penitentiary or some institution. Because I'm a neighborhood boy. I was raised between Firestone and Slauson, between Central and Alameda on the south side of Los Angeles. And that's where I used. And so I got on this Greyhound and I rolled in to Fresno because that's as far as my money would take me. And being a dope fiend, I knew that I would have to get an outfit. And being a dope fiend, I knew you people would be coming out early in the morning, even though I didn't know you, because I was in a strange town, Fresno. And I crossed over the tracks to the red light district, an area called Chinatown, and I sat in a little cafe and I waited. And sure enough, a dope fiend came out of the hotel. And I walked across the street and I told him, have you got an outfit? He says, do you want to score? I said, no, I got it. And for the rest of that day, I began to drop the stash every hour on the hour, because I had packed a bar of soap with me. See, I learned that lifestyle, that if I cut a little sliver of soap and I keistered it, it would open up my rectum and the stash would drop. That's the kind of a dope fiend I was. And so I did that. And I remember as I dropped the stash every hour in the hour, the smell. And so at the end of that day, the dope was all gone. And I asked this dope fiend, I said, listen, do you know where there's a detox? And he said, I think there's one in Palo Alto. I think they have a methadone detox there. And I said, okay. And so I got on the highway, on the freeway. And by that time I began to kick. And I remember sticking my thumb out like that, you know, and clasping that little suitcase so it wouldn't open on me. And this farmer pulled over. He was a little Italian. And he was on his way to the market in San Francisco. And I remember to this day he was real jovial. And I climbed into his little truck, and the window on my side wouldn't roll down, or rather it wouldn't roll up, it was broken. And I remember he was singing in Italian as we drove. And I began to withdraw. And as I began to withdraw, you know, the chills came on me. The window wouldn't roll up, and the pain began to descend on me. Not only the physical pain, but the emotional pain. And my thoughts turned to a power greater than myself, which I choose to call God. And I was going to call on him again and make a deal, like I had always made a deal. Get me out of this one. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it this time, because I knew I had always reneged. And somewhere from deep inside me came a sincerity that I've never ever experienced again. And I cried out to him in my thoughts, and I said, when is it going to stop? When is it going to stop? And what happened next is this God carried me to a recovery house. First I went to a hospital, because by that time I got off in Palo Alto and then I ended up in San Jose. I had to backtrack because there was no methadone detox there, and I ended up in this hospital, and I asked for help in the middle of the night. had to go to a hospital because my legs were giving out on me. And I didn't know where I was, and I wanted to stop. And they told me at the hospital, listen, we can't help you. We don't have anything to detox you with. But if you go to the drug abuse clinic in the morning, they'll direct you to someplace. And being a dope fiend and living on the streets, learning to survive in that lifestyle, I had my game plan together when they told me that. And I said, well, I'll just go into the lobby and I'll stretch out on the couch, and if anybody says something to me, I'll tell them my wife's having a baby up on the 5th floor, and that's why I'm on the couch. In the morning, you know, the vacuum cleaners came in. I got up, and I walked over to the drug abuse clinic, and they sent me to this place. And I walked in. And this dope fiend told me, he said, listen, we don't have anything to give you to detox with. And being a dope fiend and kicking habits in county jails and substations, I told him, listen, man, I just want a corner. Just give me a corner and get out of the cold. And they took me in. And later I remember the director of this place, her name is Mary Yates, on this program. I knew her. I knew her old man, her husband. He never made the program. She told me, listen, when I saw you, she said, I knew you were through. My socks were sticking to my shoes. I had no heels. My patent leather shoes stood up like this. Because I was a street hype. I'm not here tonight to tell you I was a big-time dope fiend. I like them alleys. I like them hotels. I like them vacant lots. I was just a common addict trying to get it on a daily basis. And so they directed me upstairs to a room, and there were other addicts there. And I began to withdraw. And so it took me about 21 days to kick. And it was real strange for me. There I was, you know, in this house run by addicts. And I looked around, and I couldn't see anyone of my color. See, because I come out of a neighborhood, out of a Chicano neighborhood, a Mexican-American neighborhood. And if you're familiar with the geographics of South Central Los Angeles, there's little neighborhoods. It's predominantly black, with these little barrios. They're hoods, with a few Anglos. So that's why I say I was raised on beans and greens. And so I began to withdraw. And as I said, it took me 21 days. And I began to hear this language. And I couldn't understand it. And they were telling me, we love you. We care. You're welcome. And I couldn't understand it. Because I thought to myself, how could you love me? You don't even know me. And if you knew me, you wouldn't love me. Because I'm a liar, a cheat, and a thief, and a mooch. And I'll take your money if you turn your head. And so I began to hear this language. And I began to go to the meetings that they had there. And at that time in 1974, all we had was a little white pamphlet. And that's what they read out of. And I began to hear all these concepts and these little sayings. Easy does it. First things first. Live and let live. Total abstinence. Just for the day. And I sat in the back of the room. And I looked at him and I watched him. And I thought to myself, it's not heavy enough. They'd point to the 12 steps that they had on this wall. And they were saying, this is how we stayed clean. And I remember reading the steps and I'd say to myself, it's not heavy enough. I need something profound. I need something deep. I'm a dope fiend. My name's Beaver, and I'm from the South Side. I'm a convict. I'm a regular. I'm not no knick-knack. I know how to make $1. That was my attitude. And I continued to hear this language. And so about the 22nd day, I began to catch that first sleep. That first sleep. And I continued to go, as was required to go to these meetings. And one day, this guy slid up to me and he said, listen, you better start participating in your recovery, or they're going to ask you to leave. And I said, well, what do I say? He says, just share your feelings. And being institutionalized, being in them institutions, I knew how to play my hand. You see, because I didn't have a cracker on me. And I was 500 miles away from home. I had to lean back on my survival skills. And I knew how to do that. I knew how to survive. And so I said to myself, well, I better get up there and share. Or they're going to ask me to leave, and I ain't got a quarter or a cracker on me. I'm 500 miles away from home. You better play your hand, Beef, or you're going to find yourself outside the door. So I walked up to a podium like this. And I was in a lot of pain. As I said, I was 500 miles away from home and I didn't know anyone. And I got up to this podium and I began to share. And what I was feeling was loneliness. I felt alone. And I remember as I began to share that, I felt like I had turned sissy. Because I'm the Beaver, man. I'm from South Los Angeles. I'm a red. What are you doing up there? Telling these people, you're lonely. Have you lost your heart? You're hardcore. You're from the South Side. And your name's good. But that's how I felt. And a guy from the back of the room yelled out. He said, you don't have to hurt anymore. And I continued to share. And he yelled out again, you don't have to hurt anymore. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to stop hurting. It wasn't the ass whippings in the substations. It wasn't catching a chain to a penitentiary. It wasn't kicking on them cold concrete floors in the county jail. That passed. But there was that emotional pain. Because I knew who I was. I was a liar, a cheat, a thief, and a mooch. And I couldn't lie to me anymore. I was through and I knew it. I had no heart to hustle. And that's when I made a decision. To go into this program, to jump into this program. And that's what I did. And I bought this program lock, stock, and barrel. Because those that came before me, like Bob B. this year, told me that I would never, ever have to use again. And they told me that it was going to get better. And better, and better, and better, and better, and better, and better. And they told me that if it didn't get better, I would get better. And that's what I wanted. And so I jumped into this program. And I jumped in with all 4 feet. And I got fanatic. And I got narrow-minded. And I got arrogant. And I began to wave the banner of Narcotics Anonymous. And my peer group looked at me and they'd say, "Stay away from him, he's insane." But you see, I was desperate. I don't know about you. This is my story. It was over for me, and I knew. And so I began to investigate. And I began to ask questions because he told me if I wanted, I had to take it. And so I began to ask, what do you mean by first things first? What are you talking about, first things first? And then it began to explain to me, break it down. I'm talking about addicts. I'm not talking about the fundamentalists. I'm talking about addicts. And then I understood, I said to myself, first things first. I see. I put on my shorts. First thing. First things first. I put on my pants. First things first. Then my socks. And I begin to understand the concept for me of first things first. And I remember live and let live. I didn't understand what that meant. What do you mean live and let live? They told me, Lawrence, first you live your life. And then let them live their life. And I said, you see, because I came here and I didn't allow you to live your life unless you were like me. And so I came to the first step and I didn't know what was happening about the first step. I read it. It told me that I was powerless, that I had to surrender. I couldn't understand it. They told me it was a paradox. So I looked into it. I began to meditate on it, to study it, and then it came to me. that if I left it alone, it would leave me alone. But I couldn't get the second half of the first step, that my life had become unmanageable. I said, wait a minute. I've had a little bit of success. I got my high school diploma in the penitentiary. That's not unmanageability. I had me a little part-time job one time. Couldn't understand it. My life had become unmanageable. And then one day, after meditating and reading that step, it came to me, and I thought to myself, yeah. You see, being a heroin addict, and I go into the county jail to kick them habits, they used to have they used to call when you used to get constipated, and you finally had that defecation, it would come out, and they used to call it a yang shi baby. It'd have hair on it sometimes too. And I said to myself, that's right. My life had become unmanageable. I couldn't even have a bowel movement. And that's how I was able to get that second half of the first step. And so about that time, after I had taken that first step, I was walking around. I was beginning to feel healthy. I understood that I was powerless and that I could be clean. And I started experiencing this health. This was a co-ed facility. There was women. By this time I had about 40 days. When I became real horny. And everybody else was catching in the facility. They were hooking up, relationships, They had a bone night. And I'm looking around, and everybody's hooking up, when the night guards, is asleep in the office, And I'm thinking to myself, well, what about me? So, thinking the player that I am, I start chasing. And I don't know how to go about it, because I've never been off drugs. I don't know how to talk to a woman. Maybe one-liners. So I'm trying to catch, and I can't, So I start promising marriage. And the women are looking at me sideways. So I'm insane. So I pulled another addict. We had a little time, and I said, listen, you know what? I'm nuts. I'm insane. He said, it's time to go to the second step. And I looked up at the second step and I said, wait a minute. I'm not no nut. I'm a dope fiend. You mean I'm insane? I'm not psychotic. I might be a little neurotic. But I'm not no psycho. I've been interviewed by a few psychiatrists on my way to one of them institutions, but I'm not no nut. Because I read that statement. that step, and it said, came to believe that a power greater could restore you to sanity. And so I began to meditate and look at that step, because that's what he told me. He said, you got to go to the second step. That's where you're at. And so I began to meditate and read that step and look at it, and I came to understand that I had to first get on my hands and knees and ask. And I remember getting on my hands and knees in that little room that I shared with two other dope fiends. And I said, God, and I remember telling them in Spanish, prende la luz, turn the light on. And I remember after that going to a meeting, and this guy was breaking the steps down. And for the first time in my life, I began to understand. I had been insane all my life. They weren't talking about a clinical sense of insanity. They were talking about being unreasonable. I had always been unreasonable. I had always been in conflict with me and my environment. If you told me you could catch more flies with honey than you could with vinegar, I would sit back and tell you, no. You got to know how to use the vinegar, Holmes. Or if I was there talking with you and you were explaining something to me, you were finding some kind of case, and I would be going like this. But in my head I was saying, you lying. I don't believe that. You insane. You crazy. I was always in conflict. I was always unreasonable. And so I began to understand. I began to understand all those things people had been telling me all my life. Don't go hang out with them people. Get off that corner. You're going to kill yourself. I had always been in an unreasonable state of mind. And so, like I said, that step came to life for me, and I began to understand. My mind began to open. And they told me, listen, Lawrence, you got to take 1 through 12. This is not a 3-step program. It's not a 1-step program. It's not an 8-step program. You've got to take 12. It's time to go to the 3rd step. And I looked at the 3rd step and I said, wait a minute. You want me to do what? You want me to turn my will and my life over to the care of something that I don't know anything about? Or rather, I've heard about it? Or rather, I've talked to people and they haven't seen God or they haven't heard God? And you want me to do what? I said, don't you know they'll take my money? Somebody will jump on me. I'll turn into a sissy. And you want me to turn my will and my life over to that? I hesitated. But again, I had to meditate and I had to read and study that step. And I had to ask to those that came before me. And they told me, look, Lawrence, we're asking you just to make a decision. That's all. That's all, just a decision. And so I started to understand a little. It's because what I discovered was that I wasn't giving my life to God because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. And that step wasn't asking that of me. God has given me life. I don't need to give it back to Him. And the step was only asking me to put my life and my will in His care. Just like you take a baby to the babysitter, you put the baby in the babysitter's care. You don't give the baby to the babysitter. And you do it because you trust the babysitter, because you're going to come back from the cinema and pick up the baby. And that's all the step is asking of me. I will always have the right to take my will back and my life. And I said, I'm willing to do that. If I'm going to trust anybody, it's going to be a power greater than myself. And so there I am, with 3 steps. But this sex thing is coming up still. I'm horny now. Like I tell my lady, my Johnson was harder than a desert soup bone. But I'm having the same problem. I can't catch. I don't know how to talk to women, except in one-liners. And I remember Frank G. He's telling me, go for the box, Holmes, go for the box. Don't promise marriage, go for the box. That's all, just go for the box. Don't get it some fantasy, just go for the box. And so I go out again and I venture. And I'm mumbling and stumbling and and the women are looking at me sideways and they're going, oh, I'm insane. So I tell Frank G, you know what? I'm getting into my program. I can't handle it. And one night this woman comes up to my room. And she takes me by the hand and she takes me to her home. And this was a beautiful woman. She was an armed robber. She was an addict. I know that sounds humorous. And she took me down to her room and she laid me down, and I remember I had perspiration on my forehead. My hands were sweaty. And she laid me down and she made love to me. You see, this woman had compassion for me and she had empathy for me. I don't know about you. I don't know what your sex thing was. For me, it wasn't about sex. I came to this program sexually deprived. I don't know about you. And that's why I say this was a beautiful woman, because she had empathy and she had compassion. And I needed to be held. I needed to be touched. I don't know about you. We know today that if a baby is not held, it will die. What makes you think we won't die if we're not held? And so I had to go from there to my 4th step. I have a long story of recovery because I've been here 18 years. And I'm trying to put it all together for you in an hour. And anyway, I'll go into the 4th and the 5th, and then I'll get into what happened after that. So they told me, listen, you've got to take a 4th and the 5th or you're going to get loaded. And I thought to myself, that's the last thing that I want to do is get loaded. And so I began to write an inventory. And I went way back. And I wrote an inventory. And it went something like this. Yes, I did that. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, I did that. It's my fault. Yes, I did that. I take responsibility for that. Yes, I did this. And I did that. To him, to her, to them, you know. And being Catholic was almost like, you know, and I had secrets. I'm looking at my lady over here because she told me, don't share that one. Please don't share that one. But I'm going to share it. Yeah. Because it was a secret. There was a lot of shame in it. I remember one time in my using, I'm in the neighborhood. I lived in the neighborhood that's on Bell and Florence. Georgette knows where that's at. And I remember I got down, fixed. It was one of them hot Southern California days, and I went outside and I sat down on the porch, you know, and I lit up one of them long pale males, you know, and I was on the nod, you know, and I'd raise up, you know, and I spotted my dog, big German Shepherd named Cleo. We had Cleo inside the yard in the fence, you know, big old German police dog, let him run around. And so I'm sitting there, you know, nodding and smoking that Pall Mall and looking at my dog, and I start thinking, man, I start tripping. I'm saying, fucking Cleo don't get out of this yard. He's always locked up here. Shit, Leo ain't getting no pussy, man. You see, and being locked up in them institutions, I know what that's about, not getting none.
For the conclusion of this presentation, please turn your cassette over and depress the play button. Do not rewind your cassette.
I reached over and grabbed Cleo's Johnson. And I was going to give it a few shakes. Cleo looked up at me and said, "That ain't going to do nothing for me." You see, but that's a secret that I carry with me. How can I tell you that? Not the beef, not homeboy. He didn't do nothing like that. How could he? He's a regular. Homeboy, don't tell me that. He didn't do nothing like that. Well, he was my dog. Yes, he did. And I remembered when I dumped that inventory with Freddie M., who was not my sponsor, I remember telling him, "You better not go out. You better not get loaded, motherfucker." He's got 17 years now. And so there I am. So I can get on with it. Maybe another time, someplace, you know, I can get to the rest of the steps. And so there I am, waving the banner of Narcotics Anonymous. I'm going to meetings and I'm up on the podium and I'm pounding it with this arrogance and this narrow-mindedness and I'm telling people, listen, if you thought you were going to get loaded, don't rap to me. If you had a dream that you got loaded, don't come near me. If you can't talk to me about the steps, stay away from me. And my peer group is just looking at me and they're starting to hate me. Oh, it's him again. Oh, he's going to share. All he wants to do is talk about the steps. And so the days start rolling by and the months start rolling by. And I'm starting to pick up some time. And then I become a counselor in treatment. I'm a counselor now. I'm healing. I'm saving by the thousands. And my peer group just hates me. And the old timers are just smiling. They knew where I was at. With their patience and their tolerance and their love. They would just smile. And so the months keep going by. I got 1 year, 2 years. I'm working in treatment. Then they asked me to be the court liaison, the recovery house where I work. I'm not only healing and saving, I'm bringing them out of the penitentiaries and the jails now by the thousands. And my peers just hate me. Oh. I know they used to have thoughts like, I don't want him to die, but I want him to get loaded. So he can come back with some humility. And so there I am. And for 3 years, by this time, they had taught me to a certain degree how to have relations with women. And so for 3 years, all I did was date. Was knocking it down. I had program. And when you got program, them newcomers just love you to death. I mean, if they didn't have crutches, they were on the couch. 'Cause I had program. And so for 3 years I dated. And the women, here he comes, he's a program whore. And at 3 years, I met this woman. Oh, she was a fox. She had more time than I did. She could cook. She knew how to talk to me. She knew how to dress. And I fell madly in love. And we moved in together. And for 10 months, it was her and I. And then one day it fell apart. And I felt like my guts had been ripped out. And I remember Freddie Mata became my shotgun rider. He was going to ride with me in San Jose during them times when something happened like that. You hooked up with someone and he rode with you. And so he began riding with me through this first relationship. Oh, and I was in deep pain. Just deep pain. Day after day, night after night. Going to the midnight meetings. And I remember, I'd tell Freddie, what, I saw her. Cut it loose, Holmes. And then the following week, I saw her, Fred, she waved, cut it loose. And another month would go by. Fred, she waved at me, cut it loose. And then one day at the Sunday meeting, and Sunday morning meeting in Willowbrook. I was coming to the meeting and I see Fred. And I said, Fred, he said, cut it loose, cut it loose. And he kept backing up like this. He couldn't handle it anymore. You see, I couldn't understand that it was over. And so I was able to work my way through there and come out that tunnel they talk about. And so I went on. And the months kept passing and the years came passing. And I was waving the banner of Narcotics Anonymous, and I was arrogant. And like I said, my peer group hated me. And I left recovery and I started my own little business. I'm a sign painter. I'm really an old graffiti artist that they paid to paint on people's walls now. And vans and trucks. Oh, and by this time I got 7 years. Shit. 7 years. You got authority when you got 7 years, don't you? I mean, with 7 years, who can tell you anything? And you made it the first time and you're hardcore? Hey. And I'd sit in the back of the room, you know, and by this time I was smoking cigars. Because I had time. My dog's got time. And he still barks at the same mailman. And he's been knowing that mailman for 10 years. So you know how much recovery he has. And so I sit in the back of the room with my legs crossed and my long cigar. And the women would come up and share. See, the women would come up and share, and you know how the women share. Right, men? And the women would come up and, you know, they'd have 8, 9, 10 years. And they'd come up here and they'd go, wah, 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 wah. The men know what I'm talking about. And I'd sit in the back of the room with my legs crossed, you know, and in my thoughts I'd be thinking, what is wrong with the bitch? Get on the steps. Call your sponsor. What is wrong with you? You got a brand new car, you got an apartment, you're getting laid. What is wrong with you? Get on the program. You see, but what was happening was that these women were talking about how I really felt. You see, because I'm a male and I'm not in touch with my feelings. I use this. I've always used this. And this is the program of feelings. This is not a program of great philosophical discoveries. And so the months kept rolling. And at 8 years, I met this woman. And I married her. And I've got my own business. And now I'm married. She's been at IBM for 19 years. She's got a little bit of stock. She's got a condo. I've arrived. I'm a homeowner now. I got a condominium. I got my own business. I buy a pedigree dog. I got a brand new Datsun truck. And I got time. I got time. And then she says to me, let's buy us a mobile home for tax purposes. I said, let's buy one. So there I am, sitting in the back of the room in the meetings with a long cigar, a condominium, a mobile home, a brand new Datsun, a pedigreed dog, and a big-legged woman, and time. I've arrived. Homie, don't you know me? So we decide to rent the condominium in San Jose, and we move out to Morgan Hill, out in the country. And we're married, and this marriage begins to fall apart. About the 4th year, we had our first separation. And I found myself with 13 and a half years in a garage, in the condominium garage, living there because she had put a restraining order on me and asked me to leave. But as I was talking to more outside, I put my trust in a power greater than myself, which I choose to call God. Because that's what they taught me. And so I remember saying to God as I was in that garage for that month and a half, all right, Lord, if that be your will. Because it's about my recovery. It's about my clean time. It's not about a condo. It's not about a Datsun. It's not about a pedigree dog. It's not about a big-legged woman. And so a year later we got together again. And I thought, oh, it's God's will. This is the right woman. And my lady is very wise, who sits over at this table. Because one day she told me it was the right woman. And so after the reconciliation, the marriage was over, and she asked me, I want a divorce. And having laid my foundation in this program, and been told that when this happens, that it was my responsibility to keep my side of the street clean, I packed up my little suitcase, my little kit of brushes, my ladders on my Datsun truck. I snatched my little dog, and I had $300 in my pocket, and I went to Los Angeles. I went back home. And I was in deep pain. I had lost everything, but I had time. I had time. We'll talk about time in a minute. And so I went home to Mom's, and I walked into Mom's house, and I said, listen, Mom, I said, I need you to stake me for a couple of months until I get on my feet and get a place. She said, okay, mijo. Yeah. And so I began to go to meetings, and I began to apply the information that I had. Yeah. I began to work my way through this. And one day I jump into my little Datsun. By this time it's a brand new Toyota. And I jump into my Toyota, and I've got my ladders, and I'm going to a job out in North Hollywood. And I thought to myself, well, I'll go through downtown. It's a beautiful sunny day, you know. I slip in a cassette, you know, and I'm listening to oldies but goodies because that's what I do. That's my hobby. I collect oldies but goodies, you know. Martha and the Vandellas men are blowing, you know. It's a bright sunny day, you know, and I'm driving along. I'm going to this job, nice little piece of money, you know. And I'm semi-okay, you know, so I'm still, you know, in the middle of this thing. And I went into a depression. I went into a depression. I wanted to die. Not go over the bridge. Not crash into a wall. Not cut my wrist. I just wanted to die. I wanted it just to happen. And I panicked. Because I had 14 years. I had time. And I remember panicking inside my head. Get on the steps, call your sponsor, get to a meeting. You see, because I'm a Catholic in name. You see? And I'm a Mexican by ethnic. I'm a Catholic. It's contrary to my culture to take my life. And in the penitentiaries, only the weak kill themselves. And that's why it was so significant for me. That's why it was so frightening for me. And I remember I was frightened for a week. I didn't know what to do. Continue to go to meetings. Because that never had happened to me. Because I had 14 years and I ran with the winners. And I bought this program lock and stock and barrel. And I prayed and I ran with the winners. And I went to the conventions. And I was of service. And I helped the newcomer. And I made it the first time. And I'm hardcore. And I believe in a God. And so one day I found myself going to this recovery house. They were having an anniversary celebration. I was staying close to the program. When I went to this recovery house and I was leaning against the garage door. And Jack Bernstein, who's here, came in with Gary Hayes. And they looked at me and they saw me and they said, "Is he in trouble?" They knew I had been going through this divorce thing. And so I'm leaning against the garage, you know, in this chair, and everybody's, you know, celebrating, you know, and this woman came across the grounds, you know, and she saw me. She said, "What's happening, Beaver? Are you okay?" And I said, "No, I'm fucked up." See, I had learned to tell you, because my life depends on it, to tell you and to reach out to you to save me. This is what they taught me. And she said, "Do you want to talk about it?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, come on in the office." And so I went into the office. I sat down, you know, and I told her what had happened to me. You know? And her having less time than I, you know, she didn't really know what to say to me. And she handed me a couple of tapes. She said, "Listen, here's a couple of tapes, man. Play these on your way home." Said, "It helps you." And I said, "Okay." So at the end of the festivities, you know, I climbed into my little Toyota trucks, you know, I was going to Mom's house. And I slipped in this tape. And this man came on. And he was a dope fiend, like me. And he was a convict like me. And he had been labeled by the state of California as a social psychopath. And he had 17 years. And he was sitting in this penthouse by the ocean with a brand new white Coupe de Ville Cadillac in the garage. And he had just signed a contract with 20th Century Fox for $250,000 a year. And he had a pistol in his hand. And he had written 32 inventories. And he wanted to blow his brains out. This man continued to speak, and he began to speak. And he began to talk about an inventory. And he began to talk about a boy. And as he began to talk, I broke down and I began to cry. I began to sob. I remember rubbing my eyes so I could see, and the tears began to come down. The pain just came up, and for the next week, I cried and I sobbed. And I remember in my little Toyota trucks, I'd pull into Winchell's Donut and I'd have my sunglasses on because the tears were coming down. I didn't want anybody to see me or to take notice. You see, because for 14 and a half years, as I was talking earlier about when the women shared. See, because for 14 and a half years, what I had been doing is I had been doing time. And I know how to do time. Ham knows how to do time. Beto knows how to do time. I'll bring you 5 years. You want time? I'll bring you 10 years. I know how to do time, but recovery? Talk to me about recovery. Talk to me about some health. Talk to me about some healing. So I know how to do time. There is no 12-step program anywhere in the world that refers to time. And so I began to write another inventory. You see, because I had written an inventory, you see. And as I had said, they were, yeah, I did that. I'm sorry. Yeah, I did that. It's my fault. Yeah, I did that. Yeah, I did that. And I began to write another inventory. And I got in touch with me. Way back me. Way back before I shot that first fix. And I was hot. You see, I don't know about you. I'm not talking about you. It's about me tonight. I'm talking about me, my recovery. You see, I remember when I was 6 and I was 7, and I'd wake up and there would be a crashing and a slamming and being run out in the middle of the street with my mother, because I had an alcoholic father. And the screams and the beatings. I don't know about you. See, I remember eating cornflakes 3 times a day because I came from a poor family. I remember going to school, you see, when I had a hole in my shoe because my people couldn't afford the shoes, and I had to keep my foot on the ground, and I remember the shame. I remember being slapped in the cafeteria by a teacher because I said I don't drink milk. I remember when they used to have those at the end of the semester and say, now, summer's coming, and don't forget, when we come back in September, we're all gonna write a paper about what we did on our vacation. I know what my vacation was gonna be. I was going to a vacant lot. I was going to an alley. And I remember we'd come back in September and little Johnny Joe, and little Sarah would say, "Oh, we went to Yellowstone, me and my dad and all my little brothers." And I'd sit in the back of the room and I'd say, "Please don't ask me where I went." That may not seem significant to you, you see, but the trauma had already happened. See, I was already hurt. And so I began, as I said, to write this inventory. And the anger and the rage came up, and the pain and the hurt and the fundamentalists. I remember when I came here early, they used to tell me, now, that's not nice. That's not spiritual. That's not positive. Oh, how could you? No. One finger that way, there's three back at you. No. And it came up for me, this rage, this anger. And I began to write. And I said, "You know what? You hurt me when I was sick. 6, fuck you. And you hurt me when I was 8. Kiss my ass. And you hurt me when I was 11. Fuck you. I didn't have it coming. You can kiss my ass. I'll take what's mine, but I will not own what's yours. Don't tell me it's all me. Fuck you." Try to put it all on me. Try to put it all on me when I was 7. It was my fault? And so I wrote, and I wrote. And I had to write about the shame and the guilt. And I remember I had to get into, when I was in them institutions. I said earlier that I had been sexually deprived. By that I meant, that I didn't have many encounters with the opposite sex. When I was in the penitentiary, I had a kid, and I'm not attacking anybody's sexual preference. I had a kid because I was a regular. If you're a regular where I'm from, you're supposed to have a kid. That's how you do time. I didn't feel good about that. When I got in touch with it, the shame came up. And I wrote about that. And I remember when I took it to my sponsor, this inventory, and I read it to her, man, she put her arms around me and she hugged me and she told me it was a deprivation of love. I didn't know that. And I had to write about that. And what happened as a result of this 4th and this 5th is I began to experience the phenomena of taking that step. I began to experience a healing. I began to experience a health. It wasn't about trying to be humble. It wasn't about fighting, judging. It wasn't about fighting a dislike for you that began to leave me. Because for a long time on this program, God, I wanted to stop judging. God, I wanted to stop being resentful. And I would pray harder. Oh, I'd work with more newcomers. That's what you got to do. You got to go to more meetings. You got to meditate more. Let's jog. Let's get a hobby. It's not healing. Not for me. And I'm talking about me. I'm not talking about you. Because it's about me. It's always been about me. It's always going to be about me. And I'm not talking about a toxic sense of self. I'm talking about a healthy sense of self. See, for a long time on this program, I wanted to get in line with all the other ducks and go quack, quack. Look at me, I'm recovering, so is here. We're all alike. Yes, we feel good. Oh, don't act that way. You have to act this way because that's not spiritual. Quack, quack, quack. That's freedom? Is that freedom? That's regimentation. That's routine. You see. Or going to meetings and coming out of the meeting and saying, God, wasn't that heavy? Oh, God, I got to remember that and put it in my sock. Then I'd be going to meetings. And I'd hear another one, and I'd say, oh, God, that's great. Put it in my sock. And I'd be going to meetings, oh, another one. My sack, and I had a big sack. See, because I was going to use this when the shit come down. You see? Oh, and pretty soon, you know, man, I had a sack. And then the shit would come down, and I'd be going through the sack. Where's that one? Where's that one? I'm not here tonight to carry some intellectual profundity so you can have an intellectual orgasm. You want to hear some heavy shit? Go to the library. Check out Thoreau. Check out the existentialists. Check out the great philosophers. Check out Plato. You want to get deep? You want to get off? Talk to me about how you feel. Tell me how you feel. And so I began to experience some health. I say some, because the journey's not over.
Tell your story, Lauren.
Thank you. No, I can't do it. I can't do it. Please. Thank you, you know. Thank you, but, you know, this is the program of Narcotics Anonymous, you know. And I have to respect the program of Narcotics Anonymous because there are other addicts that are coming in, you know, and I can't violate. Okay. And so, I want to say merci. And I want to thank all those that came before me, like Bob B., who carried the message to me. I want to thank two men who have passed away clean. Joe Melita, who was out of Manhattan, New York, who recovered in San Jose with 18 years. Mike Sheridan, also from San Jose, who passed away with 17 years. These are the ones that carried the message to me. Thank you.